Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to those of you on the West Coast who still have a little bit of time before the start of the afternoon. My name is Dr. Dustin Sachs. I am Chief Technologist, Senior Director of Programs here at the Cyberist Collaborative. We're really excited to have everybody here today. I love seeing some of the names that I'm seeing today. As we share about our latest resource toolkit, but also talk about a topic that quite honestly has been really interesting to talk about with our members recently, and that's building high impact security teams, building strategies for growth, for culture, resilience. And it's really a, a great topic and is going to set up for a really interesting one that we're going to talk about next month around around how we address some of the uncertainties and some of the things that may come up. Today, we're going to be talking about how do you develop your team? How do you plan for, succession planning? And how do you really find the ways to get the most out of your team? Before we do that, for those of you who may be new to one of these webinars, I want to share a little bit about the Cyber Risk Collaborative. So, the Cyber Risk Collaborative is a membership community for current and future cyber leaders. We use this as an opportunity to really accelerate your career, provide resources like the ones we're going to talk about today for you and your team to do the job of security better. Um, we also give an opportunity to validate strategies and decisions with your peers. You'll hear us talk about, peer collaboration, peer sourcing, and today is no different. The resources, the items you're going to see are things that directly came from a group of your peers getting together and talking about these topics. The idea, again, as we'll talk about, is to save time and money. We know budgets are tight. We know resources are scarce, people and process and technology resources. So everything we're doing is to help save time and money. And of course, we have the opportunity to help build your personal brands. That we have a fantastic speakers bureau and get to have really smart, really great people like our two guests today, who I'll introduce here shortly. So today we're going to talk about what is a task force? What is this task force? We'll talk about the resources that came out of this. We'll talk about some of the findings and then we'll talk about it in the course of the conversation that we're going to have. We'll talk about some of the key takeaways. We'll look at some of the resources and then we'll talk about some of the upcoming task forces. I encourage you to please ask questions. Please include, keep the conversation going in the chat. We want to have a very vibrant chat. If you hear something you really like, if you hear something you disagree with, if you've got a comment, please feel free to include that. We want this to be interactive. So, task forces are 6-week working groups of CISOs and senior leaders. What's really important about them is they are under an NDA, so they're Chatham House rules, and they are vendor free. It's not about trying to get you to have a vendor sponsor it or a vendor pushing their agenda. This is truly topics you have asked us to focus on. We get a diverse group of sectors and perspectives. Again, the members are selecting the topics, and we'll share some of the upcoming topics as well that have been shared by our members. And I'll tell you, we've gone through for the second half of the year, and we've revamped some of the topics. We dropped one topic, we added another one because we heard from the community that these were topics they wanted. Um, Everything that comes out of this is member contributed, member driven. It's not a group of analysts. It's not a group, a single person. It is truly a community driven thing. All of the resources that are available in our toolkits and in our resources are available to our CRC Plus to members in the member portal. The toolkit we're going to talk about today is now live and available to our members. We also have shared out in this past week's member update the guidance document that came out of this working group as well, this task force. And without further ado, really want to share and show resource toolkits. For those of you who may be seeing this for the first time, it is now 21 topic specific curated groups of resources, again, meant to save time and money. And in this case, with this toolkit, we've estimated you can save anywhere between nine and $18,000 in terms of just the work necessary to build these tools, do the research, get all the insights that you need. And again, we have plenty of these resources available to you for those who are interested in learning more and really deep diving resource toolkits. You can reach out to myself or Tom Ward. Pervic will drop Tom's email into the chat for you if you don't have it. It's really easy. It's tom.ward@cyberriskalliance.com. But please feel free to reach out to Tom or myself or Pervic if you want to learn more. If you want to grab a screenshot or grab this URL, that will take you to an a PDF document that explains in more detail all of our resource toolkits. And really excited, and we'll be showing these throughout the chat today, but we're really excited to release a guidance document around succession planning, a revised and updated version of a previous document we've had on a guide to attracting and retaining talent, and then some really actually good, very, very beneficial resources, including a risk profile document, an individual development plan document, sample team structure, sample org chart, and the items on the left, the two guidance documents available to all of our Cyber Risk Collaborative members. The items on the right are available to our Cyber Risk Collaborative CRC Plus members in the member portal as of today. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our panelists today, fresh off of what I heard was a phenomenal presentation at RSA. We have Helen Patton, who's cybersecurity executive advisor for Cisco, and Photius Magufis, who is VP of Information Security and Technology at A Priori. Helen, you want to introduce yourself
Yeah,
to
sure.
the
Hi, everybody.
audience?
Yep. Uh, Nice to meet everyone. I'm Helen Patton, coming to you large and in charge from Columbus, Ohio. I am currently a cybersecurity advisor at Cisco, where I focus on working with our public sector, state, local, and education customers. I'm a recovering CISO, so I was the CISO at the Ohio State University for 8 years, and I've spent a lot of time in the financial sector as well. Yeah, go Bucks. So, been doing the security thing for a while, been doing the leading a security team thing probably longer, and happy to be here to have a chat with everyone about this topic. It's great.
Thank you so much for being here, and I would be remiss if I did not shout out Rich Nagel, huge contributor to our community, very good friend, somebody who um, I have been fortunate to get to know over the past couple of years. And then Photius, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Photios Magufis. As Dustin said, I'm VP of Information Security and Technology at A Priori. We're a software SaaS company focusing on software for the engineering space. So we do a lot of cost modeling, design, review, as well as a couple of other engineering related items in our product. I've been in the security space for a number of years, having joined A Priori about 3 years ago. And I lead the security team, IT operations, infrastructure teams, and the help desk teams as well.
Awesome. And thank you both again for being here. And thank you everyone else who has attended today. I know everyone is feverishly working to try to get ready for a nice, well-deserved long weekend, but really excited to see such a great turnout here today. So, one of the things that all of our task forces start off with, for those who have never participated, is really identifying challenges around a specific topic. And in this case, one of the things that the task force that met that talked about security team development and succession planning identified a number of kind of key areas: knowledge silos, the fact that information is knowledge is kept in a single person or in a single group, lack of formal succession planning, it's something that's talked about. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. No one actually documents it, or it's kind of a verbal agreement kind of stuff. Um, One of the areas that was also discussed was the difficulty in identifying what is needed for the leadership potential, skills gaps in training as well. How do you fill those gaps? How do you find the time to do all of this with all the other things? Obviously, one of the big things with team development is because teams are being asked to do so much more with so much less is burnout and workload imbalance. And we're going to talk a lot about that in our next task force, which I'll talk about towards the end. And then, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about budget constraints. And this being, talent development being an area that is not necessarily always the highest priority when budgets are tight. So, Helen, starting off with you, as you see these challenges, what are your thoughts? Are there others that you kind of think of when you think around the concept of talent development, developing your team and even, planning for that next future group of leaders or group of professionals?
Yeah, all of these things resonate, right? I think uh, particularly it's sort of interesting. There are some things that if you're coming from a very small team, 2 or 3 people, for example, I think the average security team size, the last one of the last studies I saw said the average team has 4 people or less in it. And when you only have 4 people in a team, you get a lot of generalists, but it's also hard to help think through then like talent development, career planning for those people, because you just need everybody doing everything all the time, which of course leads to burnout and imbalance and those kinds of things. On the other hand, if you're in a big team, now you're dealing with knowledge silos, and it that becomes a real problem too, because you end up as a leader, you end up with a team that's got single points of failure within it, even in a big team, and that can be a problem as well. So all of these things really resonate. I think the thing that isn't here that I'm having lots of conversations with about too is when we're hiring for talent, we have a tendency to put a lot of emphasis on where people have demonstrated that they've already done the job. We talk about, we want evidence that somebody's done the job before, because we do rely so much on these having people who know what they're doing. So you don't want to have to train a whole bunch of people up. You don't have the time and resources to do that. And so you want people who can be sort of job ready on day one. And that's all well and good. But what we miss is thinking about what is their capacity to learn? What is their capacity to come in and add value? And so we tend to hire for historic performance, not future potential. And so doing things like doing succession planning, understanding leadership traits that you really need to foster in the team, being able to step back and think about what do I already have on the team and where do we have gaps, actually. Those kinds of things tend to lean towards potential, not history. And that can be a real challenge for people to think about, especially if they don't have a lot of time to start with.
Yeah, you make a really valid point. One of the things that I know in my last role as a deputy CISO and in charge of GRC and as a people manager was whenever I would hire somebody, one of the questions I would almost always ask was, you're not going to know everything in cybersecurity. I mean, as much as we
Yeah.
want to assume we know everything, we don't. Um, and the question I would ask is, you come across something you don't know the answer to, walk me through what your process is to find that answer. And I'm
Mhm.
interested in how are you going about finding the answer? Are you coming to me and asking me for the answer? Have you done anything? Whenever somebody came to me and would say, "Hey, I'm struggling with understanding XYZ," I'd go, "Okay, what have you done so far?" And if the answer was, "Oh, I just came to you," I'd go, "No, go back, find
Mhm.
like go figure it out. Go do some work yourself first." And I think your point is very valid. Photius, from your standpoint, how do you approach, what challenges kind of stood out to you? What might be missing? Um, did anything Helen say resonate with you?
Yeah, I don't know if you could tell, but I had a big smirk on my face when she mentioned the average number of a security team is 4, which is the exact number that my security team consists of membership wise. And we are at times constantly doing the same job and moving work across, but we're also trying to consciously train individuals in a more focused area, whether it be in our SIM or SOC tooling, whether it be in our GRC. There's a requirement to collaborate on much of this effort across and within the security team, but also to my IT operations team, to my support and service desk team, because each of them is a funnel to each other's efforts in some capacity. And they're shared in their delivering of the service, but also shared in their responsibility to ensure everyone is successful collectively at the end of the day. We're always looking for areas that we call embedment. So we embed team members across these three stacks as part of their daily stand-up. So there's a member of security that's rotating into the support team on a 10-day cycle. And we try to rotate people in and out so they are aware of the effort, the struggle, the challenges, and bring back to their team, okay, what can security do to minimize the churn of tickets as part of vendor assessments that come into the service desk team. So we're trying to do our best with what we have, with limited budgets, limited team members, and a flat hiring plan in our next year.
Absolutely. So it's interesting because one of the conversations that I saw this morning on LinkedIn as I was kind of scrolling through was around this concept of like, what do you need to kind of get started? What are the minimum barriers to entry in cybersecurity? And one of the ones that always comes up is, do you really need a degree? When Helen, when you're thinking about developing a team, how are you kind of figuring out what is it that I need? What is the persona of the person that I need?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'll tell you that the concept of degree or not degree rarely comes up in my mind. Um, it sounds a little bit pedantic, perhaps, but I tend to break job roles down into the jobs to be done within the role and then the skills needed to do the jobs to be done. So whether you're talking about a CISO hire or whether you're talking about a SOC analyst or everything in between, questions around what is the day-to-day work of this job? What are the expectations in terms of knowledge and experience related to this job? How much of this job is predictable? How much of this job is project related? How much of this job is just firefighting? All of those kinds of things go into it. And then being able to say, well, what do I already have on the team? Who do I have on the team that can do this work now? Or is this a brand new skill? And it is different to say, I've got somebody on the team who can do this today or is already doing this today. So I can afford to be able to bring on somebody who has less experience in this area because they can learn on the job right next to this person. Or this is a brand new skill. Like, do I need to be thinking about, for example, someone with who really knows how to work with AI language models, for example? I'm probably not going to find that on the team I've already got. So am I going to go looking for that skill? And if I am, then yeah, I'm going to need somebody who's sort of independently capable of doing the thing that I'm going to be needing them to do. So it's both a what do I need out of the job in isolation, but how does this fit into what's already on the team? And therefore, am I hiring a master in this thing or am I hiring an apprentice in this thing? And how does that all fit together? So am I looking for degrees or certifications or boot camps? Not as a primary thing. I might use those things as indicators or proxies for knowledge or proxies for interest, but I'm not going to necessarily be looking at it as a barrier to entry if I can get away from it.
No, that makes complete sense. And Photius, to what
Same.
extent do you sit and think about, or define, hey, on my team, I need these roles, and here's what's required of them, and here's their key responsibilities, and here's the knowledge. How often do you, how formal are you, or how much, you know, do you spend time really documenting, and how important is it to document that role profile?
We do that at least once a year. When we think of, similarly to Helen, we think of the body of work that we're looking to have accomplished, right? What is the outcome we want to see? What might be the tangible component of the body of work? And then from there, we think of, okay, do we have the expertise, the capabilities within our team to accomplish that? And if we don't, then we craft, okay, here is the body of work we're looking for someone to fulfill. We don't look at degrees initially. We don't look at certifications or boot camps, as you mentioned. We look at that stuff after. We think of, how does this person communicate? How could this person fit with the team? What is their mechanism for researching? Do they have the ability to project manage this body of work, or are they more as a individual contributor? So as we start to talk to people, we may reformat the body of work we're looking for folks to accomplish. Maybe we peel off the project management because we really like this individual. We think they can build into that, but they can't do it initially. So maybe we peel that off and we say, okay, your role will include this as part of a onboarding package that we will build you up. Here's how we think of projects internally. Here's how we leverage the Atlassian stack to think about the theme, the initiative, the epic, all of the work down to the individual contribution portion of it.
Absolutely. And Photius, I'm going to stay with you for a moment. One of the tools that I'm about to share that the task force really came up with, and I know for me in my last role, this was something we spent a lot of time on, was even more important in sometimes than who do I need to bring on is, what are the opportunities that are available for my current team? What are the roles, expectations? Where can they play? Because if you've got some, we've all seen the statistics about how much it costs to replace an existing employee. And none of us, I think, want to pay that. Plus, you, the studies around just, team morale and team, satisfaction when they feel like they've got clear paths to that next level, or clear opportunities to succeed into new roles, having that defined really helps. One of the things that the task force said was really important was having a kind of a structured format for that. And this is where we came up, where the task force came up with this document that's available, which is the role profile document. As you think about it, and as think about this topic, how helpful are documents like this? How important is it having this documented somewhere? What are the areas where maybe teams might not be thinking about that they could benefit from something like this?
I think the document is great. We have something similar when we think about the outcome of the particular body of work, right? When we're thinking about the role of vulnerability management, here are the things that we want as an outcome of this role, of the responsibilities, of the communication path, and what are the skills that we want them to have, but also the secondary individual that might be tied to this particular item, right? Maybe it's a primary member day to day, but as an equal to that member, it's distributed knowledge against the support or IT operations teams. We have that identified. We use a RACI matrix in some capacity for every one of our applications. We have it published in our Confluence. So if people are looking to inquire about our GRC tooling, they go to our Confluence page, they find the GRC tool, and it identifies who are the primary members, who are the members that are responsible for operating it, who are the members that are responsible for some of the integrations, and everything kind of flows through that.
It's not early.
I think
Not early night center.
we got some feedback coming from somebody.
I don't hear
All
anymore.
good.
I might be done.
Yep. No, I think you make a really, really good point. First of all, I'll just say, I am a sucker for a good RACI chart. Every policy I ever created as a GRC professional, I would tell my team, I'm like, it's got to have at least one RACI chart in it, just because for me, I'm a very visual person. I like looking at a RACI chart because I know exactly what my roles are. I'm like, oh, cool, I got that one. Helen, from your perspective, as somebody who has also helped build teams and build teams at, large organizations.
Mm.
How important is it having that kind of documented, structured format and really being deliberate about
Yeah,
defining your
the
roles?
key there is to be deliberate about it, right? So having a document like this one that we're looking at, an individual role profile, is really useful because it forces you to pay attention to what you really need, how the role fits in with the rest of the organization, but also how does it fit in with the expectations of the people who are doing similar roles today. So you get the opportunity to say, hey, I've got this role. From a seniority perspective, it's sort of on par with these other roles that we've got. What are the expectations of those roles? So you get into questions of sort of equity around, are we expecting the right things? Are we over or underestimating the level of work that's actually involved? Those kinds of things, which is really useful. I think that the place to take this a step further is if you work for an organization that also has career hierarchies or job ladders, they can fit within those kinds of frameworks as well. So yet another way of just sort of sense checking, am I on the right path? So does this fit in with the job family that
Right.
may have already been defined? Or externally, for example, does this fit in with the NICE security framework from the federal government, right? So it just helps you make sure that you have considered the things you need to consider. And you may decide that there are certain things that you don't need as much of out of this framework, and that's fine. Out of this template, it's fine.
Yeah.
But the fact that you've sat down and gone, should I have this or not? Make sure that it's complete. The other thing is, of course, it then becomes an opportunity between the manager and the person who ultimately fills the role to sense check that too. So this is what we hired you to do. These were our expectations when we did it. Were they on point? Or do we need to now come back and revisit this and tweak it a little bit, right? So I think the danger potentially of something like this is someone gets too rigid about, I must have this or I must have that. Thinking of it like a framework which is useful but not always complete should be sort of the lens you look at this through, right?
Yeah. Responsibilities to include, but not be limited to.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think for me, what's really great about structures like this, and we had it, and we actually put it in our we had a Confluence page for every role and what have you. What's really great about it is, as a manager, you can turn to whoever's filling that role and go, and when they go, hey, what should my professional development, what should my trainings be for the next year? You can go, okay, which of these items do you feel like you're lacking in? Which one of
Right.
these things do you want to learn more about?
Mhm.
You tell me where you think you've got gaps
That's right.
and what have you. And
Yep.
it helps that. And then also, of course, if you're if you've got somebody looking for promotion to
That's
or
right.
to change their roles, you can
Mhm.
say to them, here's what we're going to expect of you. Prove to me that you meet the requirements of all of these things. It can
Yeah.
be very beneficial in that respect. I
Yeah.
love as well that you mentioned, Helen, the NICE framework, because for those who may not be familiar, the NICE framework is phenomenal in identifying the expectations you've got. But what's really great about it um, is that there's a site within the NICE framework, and I will find it and share it, but um, where you can go in, and if what for, your team can go in, and depending on whatever knowledge or skill or whatever they're needing, if you're using Pluralsight, or if you're looking for trainings specific to that role, it will give you a list of all of them, and you can
Mhm.
say, I am in Texas. What are the things going on in Texas? What are the courses I need to take on uh, Pluralsight? So what was great was at my last company, we had Pluralsight and I could go, okay, cool. I'm going to do these three, I'm going to focus on these three skills that I need to have. And here are the three courses I need to go take. Here's the name of them. So it's a really great tool to connect everything together. Uh, Obviously open source, and really beneficial from a cyber standpoint. And there are also, for anyone who is using any of some of the other kind of HR frameworks out there, there are mappings to the various other frameworks out there as well. Um, so highly encourage that. Bring that up. That's great. You know, and so as we move to kind of that next kind of resource that's out there, we've talked now about the whole concept of onboarding, talent development, et cetera, finding the right people, defining the roles. What is the process? What have you seen as being the most effective ways of addressing and dealing with current employees and defining their development plans? How do you go about kind of sitting down with somebody and really making sure that they feel empowered and they feel the ability to grow and develop, because at the end of the day we all want to keep our employees satisfied, make sure that they feel empowered. So Helen, what are the kind of areas when you think of developing current talent and getting them ready for whatever the next stage may be?
Yeah. I think career development, the onus of driving a career really depends, it should be on the individual. Now, some individuals need some just basic help thinking about what that might be, right? And I am one of those people, when someone says, what do you want to do next? I'm like, hell if I know, like you tell me what would be good. So it's a dialogue between the manager and the employee, but really the employee should be driving it. So the role of the manager in that conversation then is almost to be a counselor, a coach, a mentor, to be able to say, what is interesting to you? And if that thing is interesting to you, how ready do you feel for that thing? So a lot of listening and helping them arrive at the answers of what do I think is next, and therefore what do I need to do to get there? I think structurally within an organization, there's two pieces to the conversation. Does the person have the skill to do the job we're hiring them to do today? And then how can I help them get to wherever the next thing is? And the next thing might be in the organization, but it might be leaving the organization and going somewhere else. So being able to have a trusted environment enough where the employee feels comfortable to say, yes, my next step is not with you, is sort of important as well. So the templates that we've talked about here, in terms of understanding what the current job role is and the things, can facilitate that first conversation, which is, am I confident in my capabilities in my current role? But then being able to say, well, what else is out there? Now, having those job roles defined throughout the rest of the organization, or being able to say as part of the conversation, I want to do something that nobody else is doing. Let's work together using this template to define what that new role is. Like, I got to write my job description for the role I currently have, right? It's really great to be able to do that with a manager who's got sort of a bird's eye view of what's happening in an organization, to be able to say, well, I want to create a new job. What does that look like? Let's use a template like this, right? But being able to say, as an individual, this is what I'm looking to do now, but maybe 18 months, 24 months, 36 months from now, I want to be doing something completely different. What are the steps that I need to take to get there? Then that's when the IDP comes into play, right? So developmentally, what do I need now? What do I need 6 months from now? What do I need a year from now? Whatever. And being able to put that through. The onus, though, is on the employee to do the work. The onus is on the management and the corporation to make space for the work to be done. And to give, if for example, in the IDP, you're going to say, well, I need I need to have an opportunity to lead a project or to manage a team or to do those kinds of things. The onus is on the manager to try and once you agree that yes, that's a development need, then the onus is on the manager to find those opportunities within the organization as well. But really, the buck stops with the employee to make things happen here.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to go back to something you said very early on. I love the question whenever somebody asks me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, well, I mean, first of all, this is not achievable because I'm not going to grow up.
Right.
I reject the premise of your question because it requires me to grow up, and that's not going to happen. But your point is well taken. It is really an onus on the employee. It is really important. I think the other thing that you said before I go to Photius is, that safe space to say, listen, what I want to do, this is what I want to do. And I see the value of, I'm going to continue to do my job as I'm expected to do, but I do recognize that my next role is probably not here.
Mhm.
Can be a very powerful thing. At my last company, the CISO I worked for very much would say to us on a regular basis, he's like, my goal is to get you wherever you want to go,
Right.
whether it's here or not. And I remember when I sat down with him and said, hey, I'm tendering my resignation. I'm moving on because I want to go to, CRA, and I want to do this thing where I'm getting to help educate people and help them make decisions and what have you, do all the things I get to do with all of you every day. It was not an awkward conversation. It was, I know that that's what you want to do. You've told me that's what you want to do. I am 100% supportive of it. What is it that I can do to help you be successful
That's
in
right.
that next role? And I'll be your biggest cheerleader. And he was my biggest cheerleader, as long as he could be my biggest cheerleader. And that's a really great thing to get to have. Photius, from your perspective, transitioning from that, we've defined what's expected. How do you address that individual development element of things?
As both of you mentioned, creating a safe space to have these conversations with your teammates is very important, right? My role where I'm at is to ensure my direct reports have a place that they can continue to grow and be able to work with them to say, hey, where do you want to do next? Like, what is it that you're working on that you don't have the opportunity to work on? And how can we create a little bit of space somehow for you to do that? And by me having those conversations with my direct reports, they're having similar conversations with their direct reports, right? So we think of it as, your pizza. You order a pizza and you want a particular topping. Well, we have to take some toppings off for you to get your pineapple and pepperoni, which is spectacular, by the way. You have to try it. And if we're gonna put
Photius has just entered into the conversation,
Yep,
the
yep,
pineapple on pizza conversation.
yep, I
I'm going
dropped
to
that
open
as
this up to the chat. Let's take votes. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? While
yes,
Photius is presenting the rest of
full yes.
his thoughts.
The salty
Yes
and
or no
sweet
for pineapple
go,
on pizza?
goes goes great together. Um, Ultimately, it's creating an opportunity to have these conversations, right? I know where my team needs to be. We're on the same page on what are some of the next steps. Uh, as a couple examples, in the past year, we reorganized a little bit of the team. We had some internal promotions, and part of that internal promotion was the conversation of, here's what I expect as a manager, leader of this group, and where do you think you fit? Do you think you can accomplish it? Do we see the role in the same light? Where are the areas that you feel you may not meet, and how do we work together to accomplish them? And by having those conversations, they had conversations to their teammates as well. It's creating that safe space ultimately. I know it's a weird way to describe it, but really it's having a good open conversation such that we provide enough work so that the enjoyment factor continues to be high from members of my team, and ultimately all of the team members that roll up to me in some capacity.
Yeah, and and I think it's interesting, we don't focus as much as we should, and not faulting anybody, but we don't focus as much as we should at times on on employee satisfaction. And it's because we get busy, things happen, we're trying to just get a job done. But at the same time, it's always interesting when I have these conversations with people, because if you really do the math, just the pure math of where you spend the most time, you actually spend the most time with the people you work with. So
Mhm.
you should be enjoying what you're doing. No one wants to come to work. No one wants to wake up and go, I gotta go to that job again. Like, I don't like,
Right,
this sucks. Like,
right.
you want to go to a place where you're appreciated, but also where you feel like you're contributing. Very few
Yeah,
people are in it just for a paycheck, especially in many of the roles that you're in. The paycheck to the stress is not usually fair, well established. I always tell the story. I started out in professional consulting, and as a new out of school, um, we made the mistake one time while we were out of town on a project, of sitting down and calculating how much our hourly work would be based on our salary, based on the actual number of hours worked. And we decided that that was not a good idea, because we realized we were making less than minimum wage if we had been getting paid minimum wage. So, but the point of the matter is, you definitely want to enjoy what you're doing. No one goes to a company going, I'm only going to be here. Very few people go to a company, I'm only going to be here for, 2 years and then I'm moving on. Like, that's not usually what most people go into roles in. So as we transition, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I do want to cover kind of that final stage in this whole process, which is the what do you do about planning for that next level, for any number of reasons. One, people are going to move on. I think the average, we've seen, back to Helen's kind of like average numbers, the average lifespan of an employee in cybersecurity at any company is like 18 months, give or take. We've seen scenarios over the last 6 to 8 to 12 months of, very tragic situations of needing to have a succession plan in place, where people became unavailable due to, very violent things or very tragic things happening. How do you approach succession planning? It's one of those topics where it's very interesting to me, because as much as we recognize it's a necessary thing, cybersecurity, we do a really crummy job of succession planning. I don't know if it's a mix of we're threatened by somebody else coming in and taking our role, or if it's a just we're so busy with so many other things. Helen, from your perspective, what are the things about succession planning we need to be thinking about?
Yeah. So to your point, because for some people it's uncomfortable, I think it needs to be something that is um, promoted and supported by senior leadership in an organization. And if you normalize it, that everybody needs to have a succession plan for their role, then it becomes less weird in people's minds. Um, the other thing I would say is, it's not just about who in the company is ready to step into my shoes. It's also thinking about who outside the company is ready to step into my shoes. And as leaders of organizations, are we encouraging people to network outside of the organization, not only so that they have opportunities themselves to move outside of the organization, but so people outside of the organization want to come and work for us when the opportunity presents itself. So when I'm looking within my own teams, when I've done succession planning before, I'm looking for 3 or 4 names to be on that list, not just one. And there might be somebody who's sort of the number one preferred successor, who is as close to ready as we can find. But there may be 2 or 3 people who might be ready, but not for another year or two. Or there might be someone who's outside the organization who may or may not want to come and work in the organization, but they're still on that list. I think just being able to say, I am consciously thinking about who would need to step into these shoes, not on a temporary basis, not who can do the job for a while, but who would want to take on this role and be a permanent person into this role is a really important thing of saying, one, do we still need the role? Because sometimes people are in the role just for forever. And when they leave, management goes, oh, thank God they're gone. We're not going to backfill. We're going to do something else. Well, you stop that, right? So do we still need the role? If we still need the role, let's prioritize hiring from within first, because that does promote this sort of sense of we're willing to invest in our people. But if that person's not ready, because sometimes it's a timing issue, who else is there that we would want to pull into this space? And how do we make sure that the pool of candidates for who could be successors is in line with our values as an organization, whatever those values are. So yeah, it's an important thing. It's not just who is my successor, but who is my slate of successors, and are they ready?
Yeah, you bring up a couple of really interesting points. Photius, from your standpoint, I know you and I have talked about your approach to the whole succession planning thing. While you're talking through that, I do want to share kind of one of the things that came out of the task force as well was the idea of just having a matrix, a layout of like who are the potential successors, what are their readiness levels, what are the development needs they need. I'm going to share that document up on the screen while you're talking through kind of your perspective and your approach to that succession planning.
Yeah, we do fall under we do a crummy job of of succession planning in some capacity, partly due to the fact that we're a very small team. A lot of folks are new to the group. 50% of my team just started within the past year. So our big focus is more on developing individual contributors up to be more of a team leader rather than thinking of me at my level. We're looking at it from the bottom up rather than the top down. And part of it is, as I mentioned earlier, having those conversations of where are the pathways that we want individual contributors to be more successful in. And typically, a lot of that effort is around consumption of a body of work for a broader audience. Are they capable of breaking down the large body of work and initiative into smaller consumable chunks? Can they distribute that work across their team members or across other teams within our group, or even one step beyond across the organization, partnering with, say, engineering or product or finance for some new technologies? That's how we try to focus at the moment with our succession planning and growth.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was thinking about when Helen, when you were talking about it, and then also something Photius you just said, first of all, the idea that you need to focus on the top down approach, or no, I'm sorry, bottom up approach. You need to. We often think about the succession planning. We're like, who's going to be the next CISO? Great, but that's almost only doing part of it. It's who's going to fill every role next when the next person moves up, or when something what happens if the other advantage that it creates is the opportunity, going back to the development and those role needs and what have you, gives you the opportunity to identify if this person wants to ultimately step into the role of manager of GRC. That person can be trained appropriately by the person who's doing it now. One of the things I would do regularly when I was the deputy CISO for GRC was I had somebody on my team who said, that's what I want to do ultimately.
Mhm.
So I would use it as an opportunity of, okay, cool. Here's a meeting that we've got this Thursday. I'm going to be in the room, but pretend I'm not there and you do this. You get to be in charge. First of all, I don't have to run another meeting, so that's awesome for me because then I can sit back and eat chips and drink soda and call it a day. But the other thing is as well is like when you take that PTO, which if you're not using your PTO, we all need to be better in security about using our PTO. But when you take your PTO, you can actually disconnect because you know you've got somebody who can step into that role, who can fill that gap for you. So it helps with that burnout, with that work balance load imbalance of giving somebody else the opportunity to do it. And I would tell my team, one of the things we would do was I'd let them, if I'd let that person run team internal GRC specific meetings because I'm like, if you fail, if you have a problem, if something happens and you do something the wrong way, the only ones who are going to know are the people on our team. It's a safe space. You're going to fail, and no one's going to say a word. I'll coach you on what to do next time, but you can fail in private. And then that way, when you go out and run that meeting with the rest of the team or with someone else in the
Yeah.
organization, you're now prepared. So
Yeah, if I could chime in, Dustin, that's an
please.
interesting point. I coach youth soccer, and one of the principles that co-coaches and I do is the practice and training is a place to make those mistakes. It's a place to try things that you otherwise aren't comfortable trying in a real game with competition. So having those meetings and running those things internal to the team is if you stumble and fall, it's just us. You see us every day. You're not going to negatively impersonate what others will think, right? It's just us, and we can help you. We can pick you back up, and then by going through those motions in that practice or training, once you get to the game, you're comfortable with the particular item that you're trying to perform, a passing or a volley, a movement, a tackle, and then you're more comfortable in it when you're in front of an executive team or a product leadership team.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to make fun of you for a little while about it, but it's just us making fun of it with you,
Yeah,
no
that we
one
might
else is.
turn it into a meme and share it through our teams a little bit, but
Yeah. I mean, we might not let you live it down, but it's going to stay within us. No, all great points. So I know we're coming up on time. I want to give an opportunity for anybody who's out there who's got questions, who wants to pose questions, please do so. And while we're doing that, I do want to share a little bit about what's kind of upcoming, and then we'll come back and do some kind of final wrap up. But upcoming task forces. We're going to be starting on June 3rd. We're going to have our first meeting of the next task force, which is going to be around overhead optimization and burnout. If you are an accelerator program member, please reach out to Purvik Shah to be added. If you're interested but aren't sure whether or not you qualify to be part of it, absolutely, again, still reach out to Purvik and we'd be happy to have that conversation with you. Just to kind of share with everybody as you start thinking about the upcoming months. In July, we'll be launching an OT security task force. August, we'll be doing security awareness and training. September, data privacy, and October, threat intelligence. And we'll be having more of these sessions kind of going forward. I will highlight as well, and there'll be some more announcements coming out about it. In the next week or so. But our June um, virtual member briefing, this session that we're having, which will be the final week of June, is going to be on protecting your executive suite. We're going to have some real blockbuster guests as part of this. I can't share any of it just yet, but I would highly encourage you to pay attention to your weekly update email, pay attention to the messages that we'll be posting out on LinkedIn and other places. It's going to be a really exciting event. Um, as well, anyone who's attended this, are eligible for 1 CPE credit. Please reach out. We do it on an honor system, but if you end up needing a certificate, please reach out to Purvik Shah. We can work through getting you a CPE certificate. Accelerator members, all of the materials that we've talked about, plus several more, are available in the members portal now. Anyone who's interested in getting access, who does not have access to the Accelerator member portal, please feel free to reach out to Tom Ward or myself or Pervic. We'd be happy to provide you any sort of that guidance. Pervic has posted, if you're interested in any of the upcoming events, or if you're interested in the meeting we're going to have next month, on the last Thursday of the month, we can get you the early reg link as a thank you for being here. With the last couple of minutes, Photius, please, any final thoughts, anything that what's the kind of maybe one key takeaway you want people to have from our conversation?
Oh, that's a good question.
There can be only one.
There could be only one. I think if you took anything away from this conversation today, it's to create a safe space for conversations between you, your team members, direct reports, such that you can discuss things like career path, next steps, changes, things that you want folks to be taking on that they may not be comfortable, but you see something that you believe they can complete the particular item. That's ultimately what I try to do on a daily basis, and it's one thing I suggest everyone think about with their teammates.
Absolutely. Helen, final thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think all of the templates and things that you saw are super useful, but you've got to make time to use them. And as a leader, manager of a team, a mentor to a person, it is not appropriate to use them once a year and then put them back in the drawer, so to speak. So regular conversations with your employees and your partners and your team to normalize having career discussions, having succession discussions, having is your job what you thought it was kinds of discussions is super important. And you can leverage those templates as an aid to having and facilitating those conversations if you don't otherwise know where to start. So make time is the takeaway from me.
Absolutely. Great kind of final thought to leave with. Thank you all, both Helen. Thank you, Photius, for both being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. As you exit, you'll be presented with a survey. Please take a minute just to fill it out, answer the couple questions. It's really meant to help us make sure we're providing the best content to you, to all of you, the best events to all of you. Thank you all for taking some time out of your day to be here. I know that taking an hour out of your time, especially up against the holiday weekend, is a commitment. We really appreciate having you here. Those who are watching this after the fact, we thank you for taking the time to watch it after the fact. You missed out on being here live, and encourage you to make it to the next one. Everyone who is watching this from the US, have a very safe and restful Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy the extra day off of work. And we will see everybody again very, very soon. Thank you so much.